أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلقه وخاتم أنبيائه وسيد رسله سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المطهرين المكرمين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من أول يوم ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم وهو أحسن القائلين وأصدق الصادقين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, the enlightenment of the hearts, the acceptance of the deeds, and for the hastening of the reappearance of the awaited Saviour, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, enlighten your souls, purify your hearts and the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected elders, scholars, sisters and brothers, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. The wretched Abd al-Rahman ibn Muljim was the individual responsible for the martyrdom and the killing of Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Mawla al-Muttaqeen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. This occurred, of course, in the early hours of the morning of the 19th of the month of Ramadan, year 40 after Hijrah. When the name Ibn Muljim is mentioned anywhere, there are many of us who indeed have understandably a great sense of resentment and hatred towards this particular individual. This man perpetrated one of the most heinous and atrocious crimes, an individual who indeed killed the chosen representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we believe the second greatest creation of Allah Jalla wa ala, in the idea that many a times this individual is mentioned to be the enemy of God. And indeed, he is known amongst many as Ashqa al-Ashqiya, the most wretched of the wretched individuals. The sixth holy Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamu alayh. Interestingly mentions that when Amir al-Mu'mineen was struck on that fateful morning, the malaika of the heavens had that particular image played out for them from that time till the day of judgment. And every time they see that what has happened, they send the morning and at night the curses and la'na upon Ibn Muljim. So he's an individual who is what? Who is detested on this earth, as well as the one who receives the supplication to withdraw God's mercy from him amongst the inhabitants of the heavens. And of course, on the nights of the 19th and the 21st, we recite at the same time the la'na upon this individual and all those who helped him in committing this atrocious crime. That's why the famous historian Ibn Battuta says that when I went to Kufa, I noticed just on the outskirts of Kufa, there's an area that is what? That is normal, just normal barren land, but there is an area within it that's burnt. He said, I went to that area that's burnt. I asked people, what is this? They said, this is the grave of Abd al-Rahman ibn Muljim. Every year, the people of Kufa come out and burn this grave for 7 days. On a continuous basis, for 7 days, the grave is burnt, without a shadow of a doubt. Therefore, this particular individual is viewed in this way. However, the question that must be asked is, what made him commit such a crime? In other words, when you study history, you recognize there are individuals who are truly the enemies of God, enemies of humanity, who committed atrocious acts of criminality and brutality upon human beings, especially the chosen representative of God. Many of us would be able to recall names such as Yazid ibn Muawiyah, such as Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, such as, for example, the dictator of Iraq, Saddam, and others. the question that arises here, and that is many a times we study the lives of righteous individuals. Should we also look at the lives of these individuals who are considered our enemies and the enemy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Of course. Why? Because the Quran, as much as it mentions Nabiullah Musa 132 times, talks about Fir'aun 72 times. And the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to realize that those people who stood against the representative of God, those who are truly the enemies of Allah, we need to understand what made them do what they did and what kind of characteristics they had, so that we do not fall into the same error. When I examine, for example, Fir'aun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ عَلَى فِي الْأَرْضِ وَجَعَلَ أَهْلَهَا شِيَعًا. Yes, Fir'aun was an individual who was an arrogant person, who elevated himself and was the cause of dividing people. يَسْتَضْعِفُ طَائِفَةً مِّنْهُمْ. He used to subjugate his people, he used to oppress them. He is described in the Holy Quran through a number of descriptions. Therefore, the invitation is, sometimes we have to ask ourselves, can we do what Abdul Rahman ibn Muljim Al-La'in did or not? The idea that sometimes we think we're immune from getting to the level in which these criminals reached. I remember, may Allah bless the soul of this great marja', this faqih, this indeed brilliant philosopher of Islam, Ayatullah al-Udma, Shaheed Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. This great scholar, he once in a lecture to his students, he said, all of you sitting here despise Harun al-Abbasi, but all of us can be like Harun. He said, why? He said, did any one of us have the wealth of Harun, the power of Harun? Yes. Sometimes we think we're far from these people, but we must also scrutinize ourselves. We may be also leaning or have a tendency to do some of their actions. And that's why we have to take heed. I would like to discuss tonight briefly the life of Ibn Muljim. Many times we hear about his name and what he did on the 19th. But what was he? Who was he? And at the same time answer this question. Was he raised by Imam Ali alayhi salam? Say to me, why? Today there are many who outside the school of AHLULBAYT will tell you this. Go online, go on YouTube. They will say, Abdul Rahman ibn Muljim, the killer of Ali, was close to Ali. They say he was somebody who was schooled and trained by Ali ibn Abi Talib. Is this true or not? What made him commit what he did? And at the same time, how is the state that he went through something the Quran warns you and I not to go through? What is it that we need to do in order to make sure that we don't fall in the same traps of shaitan that the likes of Ibn Muljim went through? And also ask the question, today there are references in Islamic literature that claim that the second holy Imam, peace be upon him, Al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, was an individual who severed his arms and legs and mutilated his body. Is this what happened? And what is the opinion of other Muslims regarding Ibn Muljim? What do they say about him today? So that we recognize where we stand and have a better appreciation of the dangers that indeed face you and I. This man is known as Abdul Rahman ibn Muljim al-Muradi. The tribe of Murad were from Yemen. And indeed, we don't know of the year that he was born. All that we are aware was that when he was young, he came to Medina, and a companion of the Holy Prophet by the name of Sa'd ibn Mu'adh was the individual who taught him, who indeed trained him in the basics of the religion of Islam. His first emergence in history, Ibn Muljim, is when Amir al-Mu'mineen, peace and blessings be upon him, was in Medina, and it was during the time of the caliphate of the second Khalifa. What do you mean? We are told that he was amongst those who were sent in the conquest of Egypt. Ibn Muljim was amongst those fighters who went to fight in order to somehow attack the land of Egypt. When he was there, Umar ibn al-Khattab sent him as well with a letter to the governor of Egypt, who was Amr ibn al-As. Amr ibn al-As was the governor of Egypt. Umar ibn al-Khattab sent a letter to him. He said, look, I send you this man. He is the Hafidh of the Quran. he has fiqh knowledge, he has understanding of the book of God. Therefore, look after him. Make sure he lives next to a mosque so that he can educate people. Al-Dhahabi, who is a famous historian respected today, I saw that he says the following, that Umar ibn al-Khattab used to love him a lot, used to respect him, used to see that this particular individual has certain qualities. The first interaction between Ibn Muljim and Amir al-Mu'mineen happened when? The riwayat say is when this wretched individual came to Medina to give allegiance to Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Mawla al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen looked at him, and this trend was something that was visible, and I found in numerous narrations, Sunni and Shia as well as Wahhabi. Why I say Wahhabi? Because many times the extremist Salafi movement dismisses many of these fada'il of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Ibn Taymiyyah, the father of terrorism, yes, and the spiritual leader of Daesh, was an individual who today you read his books and he is somebody who constantly attacks the virtues of Imam Ali alayhi salam. This one though, there is no way to dismiss, because there are so many of these narrations telling us that Imam Ali alayhi salam constantly told people, this is the man who will kill me. This is my murderer, this is my killer. And he said this in the first meeting that he had with Ibn Muljam. So when Ibn Muljam came to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, said to him, I want to give you bay'ah. Imam read lines of poetry. One of them was what? أُرِيدُ حَيَاتُهُ وَيُرِيدُ قَتْلِي. I want to give him life. He wants to kill me. What does Imam mean? I want to give him life. Imam alayhi salam, representative of Allah, is sent to indeed inspire people to closeness to Allah, to understand the journey in this existence. So Imam alayhi salam says, I want to guide him, I want to help him, I want to benefit him. But look at him, he wants to kill me. So when he said this, do you think Ibn Muljam heard or not? He heard many times. So when he said to the Imam, when Imam said this to him, Ibn Muljam swore by Allah 3 times. He said, Ya Ali, I give you my promise, I will never hurt you. I am giving you now this promise. I swear by Allah, I will never touch you. Imam alayhi salam looked at him and says, Imdhi li sha'nik, go. فَمَا أَرَاكَ تَفِي بِمَا بَايَعْتَ عَلَيْهِ. I can see that you will never fulfill what you have just promised me. You will never be able to do so. In another occasion, in Medina, Ibn Muljam comes. He meets Imam. He says to him, Ya Ali, inni uhibbuk. I love you. Imam says, you are a liar. How can you claim that you love me and you will shed my blood? The moment he said this, the companions next to Imam Ali rose. They said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, give us the permission, we finish his life now. We want to kill him. Why are you allowing him to live when you know he's going to kill you? Imam said, Subhanallah. I'm surprised. He looked at the companions. He said, you want me to kill him whilst he hasn't yet committed the murder? How is this possible? Yes. In the recognition that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, peace and blessings be upon him, on numerous occasions would tell people what would happen on the morning of the 19th of Ramadan. For example, he would say to people, on another occasion where Ibn Muljam was seen with Imam or greeting the Imam, he says, the Holy Prophet famously said, أَشْقَى الْأَوَّلِينَ عَاقِرُ النَّاقَةِ. The wretched of the people of the past is the one who slaughtered the she-camel of the people of whom? Of Salih, Nabiyullah Salih. وَأَشْقَى الْآخَرِينَ. The most wretched of the people of the the ones who come later, in other words now, he says, الَّذِي يَطْعَنُكَ يَا عَلِي, is the one who will strike you, O Ali. وَأَشَارَ إِلَى حِينِ يُطْعَنُ. And then the Prophet just pointed towards the head of Imam alayhi salam. Imam would quote this and would say, the man who would strike me is this man. So it's incredible when you read the narrations one after the other, they all point to this idea that so many people knew Ibn Muljam was to be the killer of Imam Ali alayhi salam. It is not a hidden secret. It wasn't something that, for example, was said once or was said in a random occasion. It was repeated time after time. Somebody asked the question, shouldn't this have stopped Ibn Muljam from doing it? shouldn't this have been an indication for someone who is to tell you that, look, you're going to commit this? We have a similar example in the Quran. Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. This surah that condemns the uncle of the Holy Prophet, Abu Lahab, was revealed whilst Abu Lahab was alive. He heard it, he knew it, but he continued on his path. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give this knowledge in the Quran and to his chosen servants, knowing that these individuals are now what? Are only set upon committing what they were determined to commit. Somebody asks, how is it possible that Amir al-Mu'mineen is given this knowledge? Why is it that Ali knew who would be the identity of the killer that would indeed kill him? The simple answer is, have you not come across the narrations that are mutawatir, meaning reliable, authentic, established, that talks about the degree of the ilm of Ali? When the Prophet of Islam would say, Ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babuha, I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate. And if you want the city, then enter through the gate. Someone asked the question, is there a way to enter a city other than through the gate? Why does the Prophet say, if you want to the city of knowledge, make sure that to enter through the door? Today, if you come to this blessed mosque, you enter through the door, don't you? Did any one of you today enter through a window? Who enters usually through a window to a house? Thief, yes? Somebody who wants to steal doesn't go through the door, tries to enter through from some kind of a window or something, yes? That's why we have today that when we are told, the Prophet says, Ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babuha, they say, there is a narration that says, Ana Madinatul Ilm, I am the city of knowledge, and so are the windows of it. Yes? So if you want to enter, come through the window. I tell you, only a thief enters through a window, no doubt, yes? Therefore, Amir al-Mu'mineen is described as such, and that's why I saw a beautiful narration that is from Salman al-Muhammadi al-Farisi radwanullahi ta'ala alayhi. The Khawarij, one day, they felt hatred towards Amir al-Mu'mineen when people began to constantly remind them about the knowledge of the Imam. And they kept saying that the Prophet said, Ali is the gateway to the city of knowledge, which is Rasulullah. So 10 of them said, let us test Ali ibn Abi Talib. Let's see if his knowledge is truly one that is unique. They came forward and said what? They said, we are 10 people. We will go and each and every one of us ask him the same question. If he gives us the same answer, it means we can dismiss this narration. So the first person came and said, Ya Ali, what is the difference between wealth and knowledge? Ali said in response, Amir al-Mu'mineen, knowledge is better than wealth because the knowledge illuminates the heart, wealth darkens the heart. Person comes back, the second individual comes and says, tell me, should we be of the knowledgeable ones or instead the wealthy ones? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, be of the knowledgeable ones, because those with knowledge have many friends, those with wealth have many enemies. The third individual comes and says, should I seek ilm or should I seek mal? Imam alayhi salam says, seek ilm. Because the more you give out ilm, the more it increases. The more you give out wealth, the more it decreases. A fourth individual comes. He says, Ya Ali, should I be an individual who is knowledgeable or instead should I be wealthy? Amir al-Mu'mineen responds and said to him, be of the people of knowledge, because those with knowledge are closer to Allah, but those with wealth may not be. And so each and every one of them came and Imam gave them a different answer. By the time the 10th person was going back, he said to him, before you go, listen to this. If every single creation of Allah asks me this question, I will give them a different answer until the last moment of my life. Yes, you are challenging the knowledge of Ali ibn Abi Talib, yes, which cannot be indeed challenged. Allah Jalla wa Ala gives this knowledge which is of the unseen to those whom He knows will not abuse it. I tell you, If he had given it to you and I, maybe we would have been of those who say, I will protect myself from this particular individual and I will not let him get close to me. But Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows exactly whom to bestow this knowledge to. And that's why when it comes to this, some people ask, how is this man represented when it comes to his relationship with Amir al-Mu'mineen? Bani Umayyah, what did they want to do? They wanted to say he was close to Imam Ali alayhi salam. That's a fallacy. That is not true. If someone tells you today, how can someone close to Ali kill Ali? Say he was never close to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was just one of the Muslims. Why? He took part in the battle of what? He took part in the battle of Jamal and Siffin. As a soldier. He was not one of the disciples of Imam. He was not trained by the Imam. He was not close to the Imam under any circumstances. These are all statements by Bani Umayyah to try and say that, look at Ali, he was killed by a disciple or a follower, a close follower of him. But there is no such thing whatsoever. This man was not close to Imam Ali, and in fact from day one Imam wanted to distance himself from this man by telling to people that he will kill me. How can Imam alayhi salam make him close to him when he would constantly remind individuals of his murderer? So how did this Ibn Muljim, this individual who is a person who had memorized the Quran, seemingly has some knowledge, turn into one of the most atrocious individuals? How did this happen? It is likely due to the movement of the Kharijites. Please understand this. The Khawarij, many of us have heard of. After the Battle of Siffin, there was this famous incident in which Muawiyah was desperate. Amr ibn al-As said to him, let's raise the Qur'ans on spears. Let's tell people that we are Muslims, we can't fight each other. Let us go back to the Holy Qur'an. Of course, this plot worked to deceive people, because when they raised the spears with the Qur'ans on them, they would say to the Muslims, let's not fight. Muawiyah was desperate, he was about to lose. Malik al-Ashtar was very close, who was fighting on behalf of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Maybe a few hours and the Siffin would have been over, and Imam alayhi salam would have killed Muawiyah and everything would have finished. Yet of course, what happened? Those who were fighting with Imam Ali looked at these particular spears and said, it's true. This is the Quran, we must go back to it. And of course the Imam would famously say, Ana al-Quranul Natiq. I am the spoken Quran. I am the one who guides you. Don't listen to this deception. They said, no, we have to. Then we have to go through tahkim, arbitration. You know the story. That of course they chose amongst them whom? Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Imam alayhi salam initially did not want Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. He chose Ibn Abbas, but the people refused to accept Ibn Abbas. They agreed upon Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, whereas Amr ibn al-As was chosen by Muawiyah, and the arbitration took place. Muawiyah played the game very, very well. He deceived everyone, where Amr ibn al-As says, I remove the Khilafah of Ali, and therefore he took the ring from the right hand and he put it in his left finger, and he said, that's how I'm removing the Khilafah from Ali ibn Abi Talib. Of course, those Muslims looked at this, became angry, came to Amir al-Mu'mineen and said, how can you accept this? He said to them, I was the one who's against it. I am the one who told you, don't send Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he will be deceived. But of course, those individuals would then form their own group, because they said, we will only listen to God. La hukma illa lillah. They called themselves Kharijites. The Prophet of Islam spoke about them. Amir al-Mu'mineen talked about them. They were known as Mariqeen. Those whom, of course, when you shoot a particular arrow, you miss and it deviates quite drastically. They're the ones who deviated from religion, isn't it? They turned their attention against Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, and seemingly against whom? Muawiyah as well. And that's why Imam alayhi salam fought them in the famous battle known as Nahrawan. Were they all killed in Nahrawan? No. Some narrations say 9 of them remained alive. 9 remained alive, and it is said that one of those who remained alive was Ibn Muljim. However, I saw interesting narrations that says Ibn Muljim fought with Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen in the Battle of Nahrawan. Interesting. Maybe history has confused him with someone else, but it's likely that he was amongst the Kharijites. And therefore, the story of his decision to kill Imam is interesting. Please pay attention to this so you know. There are two versions. However, the second is more likely than the first. The first, they say, he was fighting with Imam. He came to Kufa. He fell in love with this lady by the name of Qutam. And therefore, as a dowry, he was what? Made to kill the Imam. That's a very glorified story. It's very weak. It's unlikely. The real story, or most likely to be, although history gives us many versions, is the following. That Abd al-Rahman ibn Muljam alayhi la'ayinullah was an individual from the Kharijites, and he decided amongst two other individuals, Amr ibn Bakr al-Tamimi and Al-Barak ibn Abdullah. These three decided to meet in Mecca, part of the Kharijites. They said, we all have to do something. What is it? We have to kill Ali, Muawiyah and Amr ibn al-As. So, this Al-Barak ibn Abdullah said, I will kill Muawiyah. This Amr ibn Bakr al-Tamimi said, I will kill Amr ibn al-As. And Ibn Muljam said, I will kill Ali. And of course, you today wonder that out of their plan, the only plan that actually materialized was that of Ibn Muljam. What happened to the other two? This points out to a deception in the story and likelihood that Muawiyah had a big hand to play in the assassination of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Please pay attention to this. In which way? In the idea that Amir al-Mu'mineen was galvanizing an army to attack Muawiyah when he was struck. There was a plan to go and finish off Muawiyah once and for all. After Nahrawan, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen was planning to go against Muawiyah. Therefore, it was in Muawiyah's interest to end the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Therefore, the suspicious circumstances of those two failing the assassination of Muawiyah and Amr ibn al-As points to a likelihood game to exonerate Muawiyah from the blood of Ali and blame it on the Khawarij. And somehow say it was the Kharijites who wanted to kill all of us. You say to me, is there proof in history for this? I'll tell you. You've all heard from the member the story that this individual, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, at the time when he was in Kufa, he went to visit Han ibn Urwa, and Muslim ibn Aqil was in his house. You know the story? When Muslim ibn Aqil hid behind, and Han ibn Urwa, salamullahi alayhi, said to him, he's come to visit me because I'm sick. Finish him off. When I give you the signal, come out from behind and kill him. Many of the ulama, many of the speakers, they mention this story about what happened and the story of Muslim ibn Aqil. Yet on further investigation, this story is problematic. Why? It was likely placed by whom? By Yazid in order to justify the killing of Muslim ibn Aqil. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad made it up. Yes, because the AHLULBAYT condemn cold blood assassinations. These riwayat exist, and Muslim ibn Aqil would never take part in an attempted assassination. And apparently, when Muhani kept telling him, come out, come out, come out, he never came out or gave him the signal. He never came to strike whom? He never came to strike Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. Therefore, don't be surprised when you read history, when you find there's many plots. Many of these historians were loyal to Bani Umayyah. They would fabricate things to suit the Umayyads. Therefore, it is said that what? It is said that Ibn Muljam came forward, and when he was in Kufa, he looked for a house to stay. Then he saw this lady, Qutam. Now, who is Qutam? She lost her father and her brother in Nahrawan. So she was full of anger and hatred towards Ali ibn Abi Talib. He wanted to marry her, but he already had a plan to kill Amir al-Mu'mineen. See, sometimes you think it's a what? It's a story about love and all I want is the mahar and this. No. Ibn Muljam already wanted to kill Ali. But when he came and saw this particular lady, she said to him, I want three things from you if you want to marry me. Three of the mahar that I want. Number one, 3,000 dirhams. Number two, a slave. Number three, the head of Ali. He said, very well. On the 20th of Sha'ban, year 40 after Hijrah, meaning approximately a month before this heinous crime took place. According to a number of historians, such as Al-Dhahabi, this man went to the house of Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais, Al-Kindi. Who is Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais? He is the father of Ja'dah. Ja'dah was later the wife of Imam Al-Hassan, who poisoned him. And Al-Ash'ath had sons which fought Imam Al-Hussein on the 10th of Muharram, a wretched family, yes. Al-Ash'ath said to him, come to my house. Then he dipped his sword in poison and he left it for this period. Some say 40 days, some say 30 days. And of course, what we are told is when Imam alayhi salam heard that Ibn Muljim was in Kufa, he immediately said, my time is coming up. It's getting close. So Imam alayhi salam realized that the assassination was indeed getting nearer. Somebody asks, what is the opinion of Muslims from other schools about Ibn Muljim? Is he deemed as wretched as you and I or the school of Ahlul-Bayt? Listen to what Ibn Taymiyyah says about Ibn Muljim. This is an academic discussion. So the next time you hear the name Ibn Taymiyyah or those who love him, you understand where he stands and why we think he's a Nasibi. He's the one who hates Ahlul-Bayt. He said, "Man qatala Umar kana kafira." Whomsoever killed Umar was a kafir. يبغض دين الله ويبغض الرسول. He hated Allah and he hated the messenger of God. ومن قتل عليا. Now he compares the killer of Ali. Listen to this. This is very interesting. ومن قتل عليا كان يصلي ويقرأ القرآن. The person who killed Ali though used to pray, used to recite the Quran. وقتله معتقدا أن الله ورسوله يحب قتل علي. He killed Ali thinking, believing that Allah and his messenger love the killing of Ali. وَإِن كَانَ ذَلِكَ ضَالًّا مُبْتَدِعًا. And even though that kind of thinking is a deviant thinking, is one that is an innovation, there is a subtle justification. Can you see in his words? He says he wished to worship Allah. He believed it's something that gets him closer to Allah. Yes? Notice. This man, Al-Dhahabi, who is a Sunni historian, goes further. He says, وَعِنْدَنَا أَهْلُ السُّنَّةِ. We, Ahl al-Sunnah, we believe. أَنَّهُ مِمَّن نَرْجُو لَهُ النَّارِ. We wish Allah places him in hell. However, وَنُجَوِّزُ أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَتَجَاوَزُ عَنْهُ. We believe, however, that it's possible that Allah will forgive him. We believe it's possible Allah will forgive him. Another man by the name of Ibn Qudama, who's got a book called Al-Mughni, he says, أغلب العلماء, the majority of scholars, يرون أنه اجتهد فأخطأ. He made a decision and made a mistake. He had this ijtihad to kill Imam Ali, and it was a mistake that his ijtihad. The poisonous pens and opinions of Bani Umayyah and Bani al-Abbas today are so visible. When you read history, when you come to see how these individuals sought to character assassinate the Ahlul-Bayt and glorify their murderers and killers. Don't be surprised today when you speak to other Muslims. Say it's not about just the love of Ahlul-Bayt. It's the distancing from their enemies, because this distancing from their enemies is not happened in historical texts. There are many of the enemies of the Ahlul-Bayt which are glorified in Islamic literature. So when you and I distance ourselves from the enemies of Ahlul-Bayt, there is a reason, because sadly some other Muslims haven't got a clue. And their works are glorifying or somehow justifying the murder of the Ahlul-Bayt themselves. That's why another unfortunate element that exists is what? Is the idea that they say Imam Al-Hasan, peace be upon him, was someone who mutilated the body of Ibn Muljim. Yes, they say, for example, this time Ibn Abi al-Hadid al-Mu'tazili, who is the author of the commentary of Nahj al-Balagha. He says, Al-Hasan severed his arms and his legs, and then Ibn Muljim began to remember Allah, and therefore he cut his tongue. And then we find that Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi said, وَقَدْ نَدَمَ الْحَسَنِ. And Imam al-Hasan became what? Somehow remorseful for what he did, for mutilating his body. How wrong is this? Because Amir al-Mu'mineen commanded what? He commanded 4 things when it comes to Ibn Muljim. You agree, yes? This is something that's quite established. Number 1, if you give me milk, laban, you must give him 2. Number 2, if I remain alive, I will deal with him. Number 3, if I die, you strike him once, just like he struck me. And number 4, never mutilate his body. Because the Prophet of Islam said, we will never mutilate the body of even an animal, including a dog, that is what? That is dying or has a disease. And so Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen was against this. Imam al-Hasan, peace be upon him, would never do this. And you find, unfortunately, this is where we find ourselves. The final point that we have to ask ourselves is, what does the Quran say about the stage of the human being that evolves, unfortunately, and results in such a position that Ibn Muljim and others ended up like. And that's why you find this in Surah Ali Imran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, read this dua. رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا. Ya Allah, you have guided us, you have bestowed upon us iman and taqwa. Do not make our hearts deviate. لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة. And grant from us this rahmah from you. This rahmah is what? In another verse it says وَثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَنَا. Give us istiqamah. Istiqamah is a tremendously important subject in the Islamic teachings. It means what? It means to remain upright despite the pressures, the temptations, the difficulties, to fall and go astray. Someone asks, how can I go astray? What are the things that may lead me to go astray? Number one, it is belittling God's commands. It is having the audacity to go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even for small acts of transgression. Number two, being associated with those who encourage us to do so. Number three, the love of this world, the love of wealth, the love of position and prestige and honor, the love of being loved by others are all tremendous pitfalls and traps of shaitan. Another reason why sometimes we leave the right path and refuse to take part in or strengthen ourselves is the distancing ourselves from righteous environments. If I refuse to go for ziyarah all my life, Maulana, it's security problem, COVID. Maulana, I will take my kids to Dubai and Barbados, but ziyarah, no. Ziyarah, it's very hard, take this. If I am not willing to invest when I take my family to Hajj, Umrah, ziyarah, then what do I expect? The heart attracts the pollution. There is pollution everywhere. The most devastating cause of deviation is the feeling of immunity from deviation. When I start to believe, I come to mosque, I am the lover of Ali, I pray, I fast, I am okay. Allah will protect me. I'm fine. That is the biggest. Shaitan, this is the most powerful tool for him. Because we are told some person came and said, I have written a book about shaitan. Shaitan will never get to me because I am the most experienced on shaitan. Shaitan apparently then said to whoever was around him, he's the most I got to, because look at his showing off. Yes? Sometimes we feel untouchable. We feel just because we have wilayah of Ali, nobody will touch us. The reality is, because we have wilayah of Ali, more will attack us. There'll be more shaitans on us. There'll be more human and jinn shayateen trying to derail us. This is a dangerous path. This is a thorny path. This is a slippery path. I should never feel that I will never be like Abdurrahman ibn Muljim. I will never commit such a crime, because I tell you there are those who have. There is a man by the name of Al-Shalmaghani. Al-Shalmaghani used to be a companion of the 11th Holy Imam, a scholar like today, an Ayatullah Al-Uzma, a major scholar, narrator of hadith, lover to us AHLULBAYT. Then he deviated, began to curse the Imams, began to go against the Imams, because he thought that he will be chosen amongst the representatives of the 12th Imam, but he wasn't. Notice the love of positions, status, power gets to you. And if you're not protected yourself with the dhikr of Allah, protected yourself with Quran and dua, protected yourself with iman and taqwa and the right environment, these unfortunately will end up causing us to be led astray. And that's why Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, peace and blessings be upon him, those who truly understand him and want to be of his followers, of his lovers, appreciate that we should never ever in any moment of our lives let go. We should always be alert of dangers, of signals, of triggers that might grow in our hearts. And by the way, one of them is unanswered questions. Someone has the doubt about the existence of God, go and find out. Someone has doubt about marja'iyya and taqleed, go and ask. Sit with ulama, research online, try to find. Do not dismiss doubts, because doubts become greater and greater in our hearts. And we have to be observant. And on a night like this, how difficult it was for those who had firm certainty and had conviction about the right path, about Ali being Siratul Mustaqim, isn't it? Because the Prophet would say, Ya Ali, Anta Siratul Mustaqim. And when it came to Amir al-Mu'mineen, perhaps it was the will of Allah that people go through nearly 3 days of pain, knowing their Imam was about to leave this world. It was not just an imminent death that happened within an hour or two. These were the days in which people had to bid farewell to their Imam. And it was the most difficult of bidding farewell. Wallah, how can you say goodbye to a man like Ali? How can you live in a world where you used to live with this great light of God, the man full of love and mercy and forbearance, yet he was about to depart? A man by the name of Asbagh ibn Nubata says, I was sitting outside the house of Imam, and we were told, leave. Imam is drained, he is tired, he's losing a lot of blood. The poison has reached all over his body, including his feet. So they requested that everyone leaves him. There were many who had come to see him, including Asbagh, but then when he left the house of the Imam, he sat outside the house. You know, an ashiq, a lover, cannot leave his lover. Yes. Imam al-Hasan came out of the house, saw Asbagh, said to him, Asbagh, didn't you hear that now it's not the time to visit Amir al-Mu'mineen? Asbagh said, my Mawla, I can't be without Ali. I want to meet him one more time, please, I beg you. Imam al-Hasan seeks the permission of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, and Imam tells him, yes, bring him. Because Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen's heart was full of love. Every moment he wanted to give knowledge, he would say, Saluni qabla an tafqiduni. In those last days of his life, Asbagh says, I entered the room and I saw my Mawla there lying on his bed. He had a yellow turban on his head, but I could not distinguish the paleness of the turban from the paleness of his face. He was weak. I could see that the poison had spread all over his body. Then I looked at him, I began to cry and cry. Al-Asbagh could no longer bear the pain of seeing Imam in such a state. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen looks at him and says, Asbagh, why are you crying? What is the cause of your tears? Wallah, it is death, and then I go to Jannah. Yes, I meet Rasulullah. Yes, Asbagh says, oh my master, I am crying because we will miss you. It is the firaq. It's as if he's saying, what is the value of this world without you, O Ali? Allahu Akbar. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen would then give him words of advice. He would tell him important information from the time of the Prophet of Islam, and so they all came. But the hardest moment was when the AHLULBAYT were next to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He would look around him. There is Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein. There is Zainab Kulthum. There is al-Baneen Abbas. All gathered, all crying. The final few hours of the life of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, arguably one of the most difficult in the life of the AHLULBAYT alayhum as-salam, seeing their father suffer in this way. He would speak to them, he would console them, he would tell them what would happen. But the most difficult moment perhaps when Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen began to speak to Imam al-Hasan and Hussein. He said to them, my sons, when I die, make sure that you wash my body and you use the camphor that was used for Rasulullah. But my sons, there is a special request from me. They said, yes, our father, what is it that you would like? Imam says, when I die, make sure that you cover my body with the kafan, the shroud that was given to Rasulullah by Jibreel. Tell us more, O father, what is this shroud? He says, when Khadija left this world, we were in the area outside Mecca there was no thing to cover the body of Khadija. Therefore Jibreel descended, said to the messenger, Ya Rasulullah, Allah sends his salam. This is a kafan divided into 5 pieces. It covers 5 bodies. The first is for your wife Khadija, and the second is for you, Ya Rasulullah. The third, Imam says, I used for my beloved wife Fatima Zahra. The fourth, make sure you cover my body with it. The 5th is for my son Hassan al-Mujtaba. Allahu Akbar. You all know where I'm going with this, huh? That moment, that lady sitting next to Amir al-Mu'mineen began to cry and say, Father, Father, what about my brother Hussein? What about Abu Abdullah? Why is there no shroud for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein? That is the moment Imam alayhi salam would tell Zainab, would inform her of what happens in Karbala, the musibah that will befall upon the Ahlulbayt on the 10th of Muharram. Allahu Akbar. Hussein would have no kafan. Who saw this? Imam Zayn al-Abidin, when he came to bury the body of his father. Narration says when he saw the body, he distinguished it immediately. How did he know? They asked him. He said, there was no body in Karbala like the body of Hussein. It was torn into pieces, arrows everywhere. He sat next to the body of his father. He began to look at it without it a head, without a neck. Then he called Bani Asad, help me, help me. They said, how can we help you? He said, do you have a piece of cloth? They said, why do you need a piece of cloth? Oh, the grandson of the Prophet. He says, every time I pick up the body of my father, a part of it falls out. I want to gather the body parts of my father Hussein. Allahu Akbar. Those body parts torn into pieces due to their hooves of the horses that crushed the bones of Hussein. Then he places the body inside the grave. Normally when you bid farewell, you want to kiss a neck, you want to embrace the face. Mu'mineen who've lost their loved ones, they know you turn the face towards the direction of Qibla inside the grave. Imam Zayn al-Abidin looks at the body of his father. There is no face to turn. There is no neck to kiss. The heart of Zayn al-Abidin breaks. Then he seals the grave. He puts on the grave, هذا قبر الحسين الذي قتل مظلوما عطشانا بأرض كربلاء. This is the grave of Hussein who was slaughtered thirsty on the plains of Karbala. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين.